No people on the street, all shops closed, and some young people, 15, 16-year-olds, on samakate.
You don't buy Russian products?
I don't buy Russian products. For me, MH17 is a sort of leading principle in my work here in Ukraine. This road between Vinnytsia and Biela Tserkva, and it goes to a very empty space, and it goes like this. And it's beautiful. Perhaps I would wear a shirt, t-shirt, and you have all these t-shirts now. I love them very much. I have a collection as well at home. But the basic one is I am Ukrainian. And although I'm a diplomat and a distant, I became a little bit Ukrainian.
Hi everyone, my name is Olesya Titarenko and you're watching Ukrainer in English. In our series, Ukraine Through the Eyes of Others, we discuss with our experts from different fields and countries their views on Ukraine and the Russian invasion. Today we are pleased to welcome the ambassador of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, Mr. Jennes de Mol. We are happy to welcome you today and happy to be able to talk to you.
Okay, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
So you became the Dutch ambassador to Ukraine in 2019. Earlier you also worked in Ukraine, but in a different role. You were assigned to participate in the investigation into the downing of the flight MH17. Throughout these years, how has the image of Ukraine changed for you? And if this is the case, how have you personally changed?
Well, actually, my history goes back to, I would say, 1996. I was working in Moscow at that time and I had the opportunity to travel to Ukraine. So I flew to Odessa with a friend, a Belgian friend, and then we went to Simferopol, to Sevastopol, Yalta. I'm an archaeologist by training, and I studied law as well. So I wanted to see the excavations in Crimea. So Feodosia, Kerch, and all these places. So we went, and it was the time that you still had kuponi. So it was a long time ago, and the situation, the economic situation was very difficult. So when I came back in 2014, there was already a lot of progress. I came back in a country that had just had Maidan. So in the summer I was asked to come from St. Petersburg, where I worked at that time, to support the activities of the embassy. And we just had our, I would say, biggest disaster after the Second World War. The enormous amount of Dutch casualties because of the downing of MH17. So for me that was a return. And I immediately had to start working. Then, after about 1.5 months, I was asked. We made it clear that the works were ready, and I had the opportunity to go to a next assignment. And in 2019, more or less had the chance to select a new post. And we had a discussion what that should be, and I decided to choose for Ukraine because of its Euro-Atlantic course and the possibility to do things there. So I was very happy to be there. Having been here for so long and in different moments, I think it is good to see the differences. The differences in the country are enormous. You came from far. You changed a lot, and I think after Maidan it changed even more rapidly. So that explains why I'm very optimistic about the change in Ukraine. Well, and these 5 years, of course, have had an enormous impact, but we will come back to that later. But yeah, I've had the opportunity to look at it in different stages.
In your interview for Dutch television, I guess it was a year ago, you talk a lot about sad experiences of your life, about the evacuation from Kiev, how alongside your colleagues you stayed in a Polish monastery due to a lack of hotel rooms, and how eventually you came back. So, in general, how has been this experience living in a country during wartime as a foreign citizen, as well as an ambassador, as a diplomat for you?
I arrived in 2019, and this was a country that was very active. There was a lot going on. It was the time of the Turbo regime, Turbo government. Zelensky had a monobilshist majority, so a lot of things happened. Then Corona came. And Corona led to a standstill, although the situation here was less, I would say, severe than, for example, in the Netherlands. It gave us the opportunity to travel a little bit and to see things. Then, of course, the war started, and my understanding that there would be a serious situation actually developed over, I would say, November 21. At that time, I understood that we had to prepare for war because the information was just too serious.
You were noticed, or you just...
No, we were not noticed, but I got information, and it was clear, for me, it was clear that we had to prepare. So you hope for the best, but you prepare for the worst. That is actually the attitude. So we prepared for the worst as well, hoping for the best. And then it happened, and we had to evacuate. Also taking into consideration that there had been a very negative experience with evacuations, which were too late in Afghanistan. It had an impact on the situation. So leaving is, I think, one of the most bizarre moments, because you don't want to leave. This is contradictory to everything that I stand for. I want to be there where the action is and where I can be relevant. So having to leave was difficult. We first went to Kiev, where we set up a consular hub, trying to support people, especially Dutch people who were going to leave the country. And then finally we had to leave ourselves after being informed that the war had started. So indeed, we went to Poland, and then all of a sudden you're in Poland. And then what? So we looked in Yaroslavl, I remember, for a place to stay. But all the hotels were full because there was a lot of people actually leaving the country, and we were one of them. So we went to a monastery, and we ended up in a very bad American B-movie looking for shelter in a monastery. And then at the end of the day, after one night there, we went to Rzeszów, where more embassies were active, and that was a good decision. But as from that moment onwards, there was only one desire: to go back. So I was extremely happy that in April we managed to get back, which is actually
you were one of the first embassies, if I'm not mistaken, to come back.
Yeah, I think a couple of them actually never left. I think the Holy See never left. The Polish colleagues never were left. We were one of the first, I think, to come back. And that was quite an experience, because I remember very candidly that we drove from Lviv via Zhytomyr to the city. It was blocked because some of the viaducts had been bombed, and we had to drive through Irpin. And all of a sudden, of course, there was war damage along the streets from Zhytomyr. But all of a sudden you end up in a war zone, a real war zone, and you come to understand that every second house has been damaged. And you understand that this is so close to the city that we actually were very close to disaster. So that kicked in fully, you know. So the atmosphere in the car became very silent, and it really had an impact on all of us. And we came to understand what really had happened. You felt it. And then we drove into the city, and that was also bizarre, because the city was empty. No people on the street, all shops closed. And some young people, 15, 16-year-olds, on samakati, I don't know the English word, on these steps going through the city, which was very strange. But this was what happened. So yeah, this was.
And afterwards, how was it living under the bombs with electricity cuts?
Yes, well, you adapt. Of course, in the beginning we were very serious with the alerts. We had, of course, I was not alone. I was with a security team, with colleagues. We came back, we settled, we had a safe place. And of course, after a while you get used to the alarms. It was already not the first time. And I have experience also in difficult circumstances in Afghanistan. So you get used to it, and I was lucky, I think, that I was able to go back to the residence where we live, and we had a shelter there. So I was able to go back home, what I really wanted, to see also the people who were there, and to have the opportunity to feel safe. But when the air defense started working, that was of course impressive. You know, the whole house shook. It is very strange to hear drones flying over the river. We're living not too far from the river, so that really had an impact. You also see the anxiety of the people around you. You know that every household in Ukraine has been touched by war. Everybody has his own story. So.
But you mentioned that you worked in conflict zones as Afghanistan. Was it way different here than there? Because as we know, that's much more dangerous in Afghanistan. Or
well,
it's different.
It's different. It's different. You can't compare it. For example, in Afghanistan, we really had a situation that we were attacked with grenades, which flew in, and we had 2 seconds of alarm, and then boom. So you immediately knew the result. Here, the alarm goes off, and you don't know exactly what is going to happen. You still have time to go to the shelter, but you don't know what is going to happen until you hear something, or you get information via the telephone. So anxiety lasts longer here. That's actually the difference. But the impact is enormous for people.
Yeah. Speaking of Ukraine, I know that you've asked for to stay longer as an ambassador. And you will remain the ambassador till the summer of 2024. So you have some months left here in Ukraine. Could you tell us about your next plans? Maybe it is somehow connected with Ukraine or Ukrainian issue in general.
Well, I asked for, let's say, prolongment of my assignment here because in 22, when I normally had to indicate whether I would be transferred or not, I thought I was not ready. We just had Corona times, which were difficult. The war started. I just had come back from, let's say, exile. We came back into Ukraine. There was so much to do in the military field, economically, humanitarian. Well, I speak the language. I learned Ukrainian, and I really felt that I had to do something and to contribute. And my time to leave was not there yet. So I asked for prolongment. What also was clear to me that the embassy would grow, our activities would grow. And we had some of our colleagues who actually left, went to a new assignment. And for the purpose of continuity, but also institutional memory, it was important to have somebody who at least knew what happened before the, let's say, full-fledged invasion. Because let's not forget, for us, the war also started in 2014 with the MH17. So I thought that was important, and that made actually that I decided to stay.
You said you speak Ukrainian.
Yes.
How did you decide to speak? I even know that you participated in the national unity dictation a year ago, but why did you decide, while speaking and being completely fluent in Russian, so why this decision? Well,
when I arrived in 2014, I was able to communicate with everybody in Russian. And that was more or less normal, I would say. Even with civil servants, I could communicate in Russian. In 2019, I put on the television and I saw a lot of державная мова, a lot of state language, Ukrainian state language. And I was not able to fully understand what was being said. I understood something, but not fully. And I understood that I had to change because the situation had changed in these 5 years. So in the beginning, I spent time trying to learn the basics of Ukrainian. But during Corona times, I all of a sudden had, like everybody, more time. And we had Zoom opportunities. So I intensified my lessons and had 2 times a week lessons. Then I made progress. And now I can really use it, but it has become a, I would say, also political statement, because for me, all of a sudden, I want to, as a diplomat, to win the hearts and minds of Ukrainians. And for that, I have to move and I have to make a first step. And by speaking Ukrainian, that helps. And especially in times of war, when identity is being questioned and bombed even, language is very important. And of course, I knew that I would not be fluent in Ukrainian, but it's enough. And I can, every morning when I drive to the office, I listen to Ukrainské radio. And for me, that gives me information, but it also gives me a language course. And every day I hear the words that are relevant for that day. So it stimulates me to use it. And now, for example, in interviews, when I prepare the text or the questions, I can answer in Ukrainian.
Можемо спробувати українською.
Безумовно, я можу продовжувати українською мовою, але ви знаєте, це дуже складно для мене, і це краще і легше, коли я говорю англійською мовою. І з вашого дозволу я продовжую.
So let's switch to English. Do you have a favorite Ukrainian song? You said that you listen to Ukrainské radio, but maybe you listen also to the Ukrainian artist, music, and so on.
Yes, I like Vakarchuk, Okean Elsie. I like that. I like Alina Pash. I know there are things around her, but I like that. Especially when I was in the beginning here, I heard her song of the national anthem during one of the first national holidays that I attended. But I listen to the radio a lot.
Speaking of identities, you told us that you worked in Russia in the 90s.
Yeah.
You served as a cultural attaché and consul general in St. Petersburg right before. So can you develop a little bit how was Ukraine perceived in that time? And for instance, in Russia and in the Netherlands, as you are from the Netherlands.
Yes, well, I think now we talk a lot about colonialism, about imperialism of Russia. I think at that time, when I had meetings with Russians and Russian officials, they very much were not able to understand that let's say the independent republics, and now I'm talking about 1995, 1996, were really independent. So for them, it was still their territory. And you felt that.
At what levels?
Politically, culturally? I would say you felt it at the working level. People still thought that let's say the composition of the Soviet Union was still there, that it was one territory. But these territories had become independent. So the republics, Georgia, Ukraine, Belarus, they were independent. But they really thought at that time still that it was their territory. That was something that you felt. I remember in 1996, we also saw that, for example, in Crimea, Lushkov, the mayor of Moscow, was still handing out passports. So it was very strange attitude there. And then I would say later on it changed. When I was back in 2011, of course, a lot had happened already with the elections, with the Balotnaya demonstrations. We had the Arab Spring. People, I think the situation, political situation, became very, I would say, grim. And then, of course, in 2013, with all the discussions about EU relations between Ukraine and the EU, and with the hesitation of Yanukovych to sign agreements, all of a sudden you heard a lot of propaganda on the TV. So, and especially, let's say, at the beginning of the illegal annexation of the Crimea, you heard Krim nash, Crimea is ours, fascisti, banderisti, every day on the TV. It was horrible. So the whole propaganda machinery started working, and it became impossible to watch Russian TV. So then the attitude was very negative.
Yeah, and in the Netherlands,
in the
example,
Netherlands,
as for
yes,
your relatives or your family.
Yeah, well, you know, in the Netherlands the situation was of course different because I think people didn't know that much about Ukraine. It came step by step, awareness of Ukraine. In 2016, we had the referendum. We knew about Ukraine, of course, because of the football. We were playing football in Kharkiv in the European Championship in 2012, I think it was. But illegal annexation was totally unacceptable for us. So people were aware what was going on, and I think more or less they have a very good stance towards Ukraine, which has developed after the beginning of the full-fledged invasion even further.
But still in 2016 the Dutch voters voted against the EU-Ukraine treaty in general. But in your opinion, has it changed since then, their attitude? Or for instance, it has already changed before, after the MH17?
I think after this MH17, that was of course a disaster for us. I think for the whole world, it shook the whole world. And we came to understand very clearly what was going on there. So people were upset, and we wanted truth, accountability, justice, and that was taking place with researchers and let's say criminal procedures, etc. In 2016, the situation was a bit different. There was a referendum on the EU-Ukraine Association Agreement, and the turnout was only 30%, a little bit more than 30%. And there was a slight majority that actually voted against. At the end of the day, our government decided to sign. But it was a sign, and it was actually, I think the referendum was not as much about Ukraine, because
it wasn't representative.
It was not really, it was of course legitimate all, and it was a sign, but it was a sign of dissatisfaction about what was going on in the Netherlands, and I think also with regards to European politics in general. So that was actually the sentiment. But at the end of the day, we signed, and that's also thanks to the leadership of our Prime Minister, who managed the situation quite well. Later on, because of the full-fledged invasion, situation of course dramatically changed. People understood that the aggression came from Russia, and that this was illegal and that something had to be done. And there the course of action of our government was very clear.
We already talked about a little bit about the EU integration, as also about our relationships with the EU. Integration, Ukraine's EU and NATO as well. Integration, Mark Rutte, I guess in one of the recent interviews, said that it wasn't really yet possible for Ukraine to become a member now. In your opinion, is there any understanding when it might be possible, and can we talk about some time frame for it, for both cases, for both alliances?
Yeah, that's very difficult for me to say because I'm not a politician, I'm a civil servant. But what I see is, let's say in both instances, the future of Ukraine is within the EU and within NATO. And that has been confirmed. Now the process of negotiations starts, and with regards to the EU, it is very clear. We came from, let's say, a deep and comprehensive free trade agreement. We have a visa liberalization agreement. There are all sorts of trade arrangements. And it's a step-by-step approach. Now we're waiting for the European Commission to come up with advice on when the intergovernmental conference can start to talk about the accession. So this is a process that takes time, and the Dutch stand is actually a very merit-based approach. So we look at it with, let's say, we are strict on the conditions, fair, and we want to be engaged. So we also want to help as much as possible to have a good accession process. When it comes to NATO, there has been a declaration of NATO states that, and there is also the NATO-Ukraine Cooperation Council, which states that the future of Ukraine is within NATO, but there is still ample of room for further cooperation and technical cooperation. And I think that is a process which is now going to take place, and it's already taking place, and it will lead to conclusions in the summit in Washington. It's very difficult for me to say exactly how the timeline will look like, but it's work in process, and it's actually a question of growing towards each other.
And what do you think about peace talks that have increasingly appeared in the press, publicly or privately? In your opinion, is it wise to start sort of it? Now, are we in a strong position, or it's better to seize the initiative on the battlefield, or even, if it's possible, to win on the battlefield?
Yeah. Well, I'm a diplomat, so I know, and I actually read an article making an analysis of all the, let's say, military conflicts in the world as of 1945 and how they were settled. Most of them, there is some kind of agreement. Many of them actually are unclear how they end, but they continue for a while, and then they might reflame again. Then there are peace settlements. There are all sorts of varieties. At the end of the day, there is need to talk. But the question is there trust, and is the basis for talks ready? And we think that it's up to Ukraine to decide when the time is ripe. But we can help. We can help with preparations, with brain power, with support, and making the conditions right for Ukraine to decide for themselves when the time is right to come up with peace negotiations.
And what would you say about the Ukrainian diplomacy in general? What are the main successes for now?
I think what I've seen is an enormous intensification. I'm extremely pleased by what I see because, first of all, there's outreach to more and more countries. I think even last year you decided to open more than 10 embassies in Africa, which is important because every country matters and you have to invest in relationships. And I think that is the lesson that Ukraine has. It has to make use of the possibilities to engage the world and have an open, let's say, mind when it comes to the problems of others. You have to acknowledge each other's problems to get attention to your own issues. So that is important, and I think it is very important for Ukraine to open these embassies to engage, which is happening. And the same is happening in Latin America. Yesterday I was in a meeting where they showed their let's say intentions of being active in Latin America as well. I think that is crucial, and the same should happen in Asia. So that is one step. Another step is acknowledge the problems of others, because it's also an exchange. So that is also important. What I like very much is the creativity of your diplomacy. I think you do a very good job when it comes to debunking disinformation from Russian side. I think you're creative, you're eloquent. This is very, very important. At the same time, I see also an enormous, let's say, resilience with your people, and also, let's say, you're convinced of your position. It feels, and it has also impact on us.
But are there any disadvantages or any points that we may improve?
Yes, there's always room for improvement, but I think you develop very fast. And my criticism, to be honest, I would not
it's
share
a recommendation.
Yeah,
it's
not a recommendation. No, but I do that within.
You're a diplomat.
I'm a diplomat, so I do that in closed circles. But I think overall it's impressive what I see happening. So I really applaud, let's say, the intensity. And you know, diplomacy is it is not only diplomats. Diplomacy is also, let's say, a lot of the NGOs are working. You have a lot of NGOs who are extremely active in Brussels, in capitals. I see them traveling. They are very vocal and doing a very good job. You have journalists who do a lot of good work. You have academics. You have actually, diplomacy is much more than just, let's say, the diplomat. Actually, you need the brain power and the ideas and the creativity of the broad scope of your society. And this is very important. I see that happening, and I think that is very, very good. So I'm really impressed by what I see, especially, I would say, of the non-professional diplomats. They are very, I would say, informative, but also they are pushing, and I'm impressed.
Maybe the approach is up to date, is more up to date.
No, I think it's just a different, you know, we play chess at different tables. Mm-hmm. So it is important to bring them together, but accept the fact that it can be played at different tables. And this is what is happening, actually.
The Netherlands and Ukraine share a long history of diplomatic relations. It began long before in 20th century. But as for now, in your opinion, and before, for instance, 2022, which aspect of these relations would you like to highlight or talk about?
Yeah, now it's all about, let's say, stopping Russian aggression. So military support is crucial. And we came, let's say, from basic support in 2022. And we went to Panzer howitzers, we went to radar system, tank coalition, Patriot system, and now we're with F-16s. So this is very important. What we have, we give. What we cannot, let's say, give, we try to arrange or finance and come up with coalitions trying to help you. I think the tank coalition was an example of that. Now we're in the ammunition coalition, trying to give you enough ammunition for your instruments at the front line. The same goes on with the F-16 coalition. And then there is the, let's say, the diplomatic effort in order trying to get as much support as we can to rally support behind Ukraine. That is what we do as well. So that is, I would say, the military part. Innovation is important. This is a war about innovation. The drones are flying. This is a new element. And innovation of industries, military industries, is crucial. So we invest as well in cooperation there. And this is a very broad, let's say, field of expertise where we cooperate. Then, of course, there is the economic part. The economic part, it is crucial that the economy continues to function. So otherwise you get an implosion of society, and then there's nothing to fight for anymore and to defend. So it is important to support the economy with, let's say, instruments to support economic development, but also maintain, let's say, budget stability in the country. We are working together in IMF, in the EBRD, and all these international organizations. Then, of course, there's the humanitarian part. A lot of people need assistance, and they need to be provided. So we provide assistance through international organizations of the UN, UNHCR, for example. But apart from that, there's also, let's say, topics. We're heavily involved in demining, humanitarian demining. People cannot come back to their villages if there are so many mines. Imagine there are, I think, over a size in Ukraine, there's a size of about 3 to 4 times the Netherlands, which is mined, where there are UXOs. So the problems are immense, and we have to tackle that. And we do that through assistance to CESU, via UNDP. We work closely together in development of instruments, trying to finance all this. It's just an example. And I know I'm talking now long, but I also want to highlight that we are very active when it comes to accountability. It's crucial that let's say, the war crimes of the Russian Federation are stopped and are documented, and that they are prosecuted. For that you need tribunals, institutions, documentation. We work together with the ICC. We do a lot with your Prosecutor General's office, with the Ministry of Justice, trying to set up claims commission, damage registers, acknowledgement of the damage that is done to persons, but also to the country as a whole. And this is very, very important. So we're active in all these fields. Mm-hmm. And that actually keeps me busy as well, because I try to be active in all these fields as well.
In Kharkiv region, there is also, according to the research of the Institute for the Study of the War, absence of possibility to strike targets on the Russian territory compromise the possibility of Ukraine to defend itself. Mm-hmm. What is the Netherlands government position towards the possibility to strike in the territory of the Russian Federation?
Yeah, it's horrible what is going on in Kharkiv. I love the city very much. I've been there a lot of times. And we were there on the 1st of March with Prime Minister Rutte signing our bilateral security arrangement with Ukraine. We're there with the President as well. And it's horrible to see what is happening. You know, it's up to Ukraine to decide how it's going to defend itself. And we're actually, as a partner of Ukraine, open to whatever idea they have, and we're supportive. And we are thinking that that Ukraine is entitled to protect itself and defend. So it also means that you will have to hit the enemy where it hurts. That's it.
And what about sending troops to Ukraine as part of coalition or NATO? We heard that idea a lot from President Macron and our Baltic partners. What about the position of the Dutch government of this?
Yeah, it's not on the table, actually. This issue is not on the table. Yes, it's being discussed, but a lot is being discussed. I think now more relevant is the whole question of training of troops, preparation of troops that are going to be used after mobilization. This is something there where we participate as well in the discussions. We always said we have an open mind. We take things pragmatically and we look at the possibilities of where we can help. But it's actually at the end of the day Ukraine that decides. But we want to provide assistance which is effective and efficient. And we're looking forward to ideas also from the Ukrainian side to be more efficient in our training activities. So wait and see.
Going back to the MH17 case, it's one of the key points of the Netherlands and Ukraine relations. What do you remember from that experience, coming here, seeing all the horrible things, heard about it? Can you talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, for me, MH17 is actually, let's say, it's the beginning of my professional involvement with Ukraine. And I will also end with it because 17th of July, it will be 10 years. And then it's more or less the end of my, let's say, stay here in Ukraine. So I begin with MH17 and I end with it. And of course, there are a lot of lessons to be learned because of the, let's say, prosecution of indicted persons. Lessons learned from a legal point of view. We had a cooperation within the framework of the joint investigation team with countries like Ukraine, but also with other countries like Australia, Malaysia. This all needs to be taken on board. It also makes that I always repeat that the war started in 2014. Because I remember very well that when we were trying to get, let's say, remains of the plane, of bodies back to the Netherlands, that was very, very emotional. I remember very, very well the day that these flights came in from Kharkiv with the remains of passengers coming in the Netherlands, more than 100 black cars driving over Dutch roads towards from Eindhoven to Hilversum. This is on my radar screen very vividly. So it has also led to a situation that this keeps me busy every day. I know some people who lost relatives, they deal with this every day and up until the day of today. And it also means that I personally remember this every day. So for me, MH17 is a sort of leading principle in my work here in Ukraine. When I arrived in 2019, I went to see the contact line. We have a lot of activities there with UNDP. We did a lot of community security issues. I went to Vuhledar, I went to Bakhmut, I went to Stanica Luhansk to see all these places. And it really hurts to see what is happening there after having seen all these places. But I was there and the war went on, and it was called low intensity warfare. Every day 4 or 5 people died. You read it, and you know, it had an impact on me as well. So this is what I carry with me.
Yeah, you traveled a lot, especially after the full-scale invasion, especially to the towns and cities affected by the war. Can you name a place, or maybe you visited a town that you know, became a favorite one or became a key town for you for some reasons? Yeah,
well, it's very difficult to say because I have a lot of emotions with a lot of towns actually, and they're all different. What had a very, very profound impact on me was actually going to Kherson after the liberation. We were invited to go by train to Mykolaiv and then by car to Kherson. And we were in a city which was still standing, but everything was robbed, no electricity, people were walking around dazzled. And at the end of our visit to the city, we spoke to a lot of people, and we went to see a police center which had been used as a detention facility by the Russians, and it was just awful. That was really awful. It was brutal. And I remember that so Russian aggression was so close, and that really had an enormous impact. So it led to a situation that I was 100%, let's say, motivated to do everything I can in the field of accountability to help Ukraine stop this, and this Russian impunity has to stop. And justice, acknowledgement of damage done to the Ukrainian people has to be taken care of. So Kherson was really let's say, a place which became very symbolic for me. But I've been in other places as well. It depends on people. I think places are important. I love the Carpathians. I love to go to Yaremche. I love to travel around.
You traveled a lot as a tourist as well, not for...
Yes, as a tourist. But for example, what I loved as well, there is this road between Vinica and Biela Cerkva. And it goes to a very empty space. And it goes like this. And it's beautiful. It's, it's agriculture. It's endless. I'm from a small country where everything is full. We optimize our landscape and our land. There you see this glowing beauty. So that also had an enormous impact on me. But also just visits to people, whether it's Chernihiv or Kamenets-Podolsky. I love that as well. Mm-hmm. I remember walking in the botanical garden of Chernivtsi, which was just beautiful because I met a director and he told about the activities. It was just sheer love for nature.
You talked about accountability, which is a very important point nowadays. In a recent interview with the New York Times, Volodymyr Zelensky was talking about countries who are still seeking to retain trade and diplomatic ties with Russia.
Yeah.
In your opinion, why is this happening? The West is no longer so confident in Ukraine's victory, or there are some economic, political reasons for that?
Well, I think you mentioned a couple of things and they a little bit need to be nuanced, I think. Diplomatic relations are still there because you have to open channels. You have one way or another to talk to each other, how difficult it might be. That is one thing. Then there are sanctions, and the sanctions are very severe. They have an impact, but they can be more efficient as well. And the number of sanction packages continues. There are companies who have been active on the Russian market. They've been there for a long while. Some of them have decided they are under the sanction regime, so they have to stop their activities. And if they do not, they will be fined, etc. Then there are companies who are still active, perhaps not under the sanction package and the sanction regime. And the question is whether, from a moral point of view, these companies can continue to be active in Russia. There, the consumer also plays a role in sending a message, I think. Then there are the issues related to companies which have difficulty selling their assets because there is a lot of pressure on them as well. So it's complicated, and personally, when I buy goods, I look at where it comes from and what the background of a company is. So I think that is also important for us as individual consumers to look at the whereabouts of companies and make a decision for yourself.
You don't buy Russian products?
I don't buy Russian products. I don't buy products from companies, I try at least, which are actively involved in sponsoring the Russian state budget. I don't want that, personally.
On your social networks pages, you are very active and open about your experience, discoveries, travels. Speaking of your last months here in Ukraine, what would you post or write as a farewell message on your Twitter, for instance?
Yes.
What would you write or post?
Well, I haven't thought about it yet. Well, first of all, I wanted to be active because I wanted to tell about my experiences in Ukraine, and I think it also helps people to understand how life is. And I get a lot of questions about how it is to live in Ukraine. People have difficulty, they look at the news, they see horrible things, but they think that the whole country is ablaze, which is not the case. If you go now outside in Kiev, you see another type of life. There's anxiety, but at the same time, life also continues, very difficult to understand. You could say, well, stay in the fight. That's also a slogan which you hear. Perhaps I would wear a t-shirt, and you have all these t-shirts now. I love them very much. I have a collection as well at home. But the basic one is I am Ukrainian. And although I'm a diplomat and a distant, I became a little bit Ukrainian after 5 years, you know. This country has become part of me. And although I'm still professionally capable of keeping the distance and protecting Dutch interests, which is my task, I nevertheless cannot help it of becoming a little bit Ukrainian. So I will wear I am Ukrainian with pride.
Thank you so much, and we'll definitely like it and share it. Thank you so much for your insights and for your interest in Ukraine in our sincere conversation. Thanks to our viewers for being with us. I hope that you found the answers to all of your questions. Comment, share, believe in Ukraine, believe in yourself, and see you.